Yeah, it worked very well for us. In fact, it worked so well that we were able to sell the business a few years later to Alaska Airlines.
Yeah, and I know you have a class on this, so why don't you tell our listeners a bit about the overwhelm class and how they can use it to overcome and get to where you are today?
Welcome to Inspiration Contagion, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each interview spotlights transformational business leaders, their stories, challenges, and advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. Learn how you too can achieve peak performance, build more revenue, and lead the legacy you were meant to lead.
Right, welcome to episode 107 of Inspiration Contagion. This week I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Ral West. She is the founder of Ral West Living the Dream and the creator of a course for entrepreneurs called Overwhelm. Create a smooth running business with less stress. Don't we all want that? I certainly do. Ral West is not your average entrepreneur. She's a seasoned professional who has been a business owner and a manager for over 40 years. Ral has had valuable experience in scaling businesses and mastering the art of effective systemization. Ral honed her business acumen with real-life experience. She is a master at the practical implementation of business theories to create effective processes that transform businesses and multiply success. Respected in both the tourism industry and multi-family real estate circles, Ral is recognized for her founding successful businesses, authoring courses, and contributing to various boards, while also being a philanthropist and dynamic speaker. That's quite a background. I'm super excited to have you here. Welcome, Ral.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive right in. I want to talk about what makes you an inspirational leader, or what would you say to our listeners is your secret sauce?
I think my secret sauce is, for one thing, I am committed to lifelong learning. So I'm always improving myself and always adding knowledge to, my list of experiences, and I implement what I learn. So there's a one thing to just absorb knowledge, and it's another thing to actually use it. And I think that that's what I'm really, really good at. Execution.
Oh my goodness. There's so many people out there who, I think you recently also went to a Tony Robbins event. So you can go and be profoundly moved by something a speaker shares or read a book, and you know in your core, in your intuitive body that you need that thing. But there's so many people out there that don't execute, and they stay stuck. And then months, years, decades go by, like, oh gosh, I remember that moment, and I missed the train. So that's pretty amazing secret sauce. And I guess my follow-up question to that is, what inspired you to hone that skill and create and dive into that execution?
I'm not sure. I think I've always been that way. But I know that the really pivotal example of that was in 1994. We had lunch with Robert Kiyosaki at a hotel on the Big Island near Kona, and he recommended that we read a book. And we immediately went to the bookstore that afternoon, bought the book, started reading it. A few days later, we were back home in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Now, boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. And, the staff was just like, okay. And at the same time, I was back in college because earlier in my life, I had been a college dropout when I was like 19. And later I decided I wanted that degree. I didn't need it for career advancement at that point because we already had our own business and it was quite successful. But I just wanted that degree. So I enrolled in a degree completion program, and it was nighttime classes mostly with other mid-career professionals. And we would have these classes and talk about business theory. The degree was in organizational management. And so invariably, the morning after I had one of these nighttime classes, I would come to the office and say, guess what I learned last night? And this is what we're going to do now. And the managers and the staff would just go, oh my God, Ral, again, what is it now? But it was exciting. It was really thrilling to be able to learn something that I could put to use in my own little laboratory, my business.
I like that. It's funny. I use that analogy with my clients a lot of the business laboratory and the marketing laboratory and how we need to be our own scientists and test new hypotheses and experiment with things. So, yes, first of all, if you're going to take a class, you're going to read a book. Why on earth would you not then take action and implement it? So listen to Ral's secret sauce and take action today. If you hear something we say today that Ral says, do it. Just make it happen. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck and we're going to be in the same place later. So on that, I want to ask you, what does inspiration mean to you?
Wow, inspiration. Well, I think other people inspire me with their stories of success or overcoming challenges. So, we get inspired by those examples, and inspiration can also come from within. We can be inspired to reach our full potential. Sometimes we just need to tap in and listen to the voices from on high, whatever it is that you believe in as the great spirit or whatever, and realize that, that there's more to life than just this, and we can keep striving and reaching and growing, and there really is no limit. So I'm inspired by the possibilities.
You guys, in case you didn't hear that, there's no limit. So if you're seeking to get permission from somebody and you need to hear that, Ral and I give you permission. You don't need it from us, but there's no limit. Why are you getting in your own way? I love that. It's a great reminder also that inspiration that's sustainable, in my opinion, and authentic comes from within. We can borrow inspiration from others to start seeking that within. But I would encourage our listeners to get quiet and figure out what inspires you from within. And if you need to borrow that from people like Ral and her experience and her journey, her stories, that's a great place to start finding that spark within yourself. But don't stop there. Find what works for you within. So we're going to shift a little bit, and we're going to talk about peak performance. And given your background, I'm excited to hear some of the stories you're going to share. We're going to start with how would you define peak performance, and how did you arrive at this definition?
I haven't given a whole lot of thought to peak performance. I think I hear about it a lot when it comes to athletes, and I've never considered myself much of an athlete. But in business, I think peak performance is about, doing your very best all the time. And again, going back to what we just talked about, not limiting yourself and striving for not perfection, but excellence. Because, perfection is one of those fleeting things that, you might have it for a second and then it's not there. So that's not the goal. But really doing your best and striving for the most excellent outcome you can achieve, the most excellent commitment to a goal. All of that is a part of peak performance.
I love that. And what's kind of interesting is Ral just said she hasn't given much thought to peak performance until I asked her this question, which is kind of interesting because she's been incredibly successful in her businesses and her career. But we might just call it something different. But I do love this redefinition of striving for excellence and not perfection, y'all. And this has come up recently this week with quite a few clients and people in my network, in my world, of this obsession with making mistakes or fear of failure or feeling like we need to be quote unquote perfect or quote unquote normal. And when we put ourselves into that corner of that pedestal of perfectionism or trying to be quote unquote normal, we're not authentically ourselves. And so we actually are completely out of alignment with the possibility of peak performance when we're completely inauthentic.
Well, so, and I also think that perfectionism is paralyzing, because you're so afraid that you're not going to achieve it that you give up and you stop trying. So it can be an enemy. So
yeah. 100%. Yeah. Actually, perfectionism is one of the villains that I describe to the folks I work with. And the solution is to shine a light on your authentic self. Instead of trying to be what social media or society or somebody in the world describes as perfect or normal or wonderful or beautiful, shine a light on who you are today and what you love about yourself instead. And I agree, it can be certainly paralyzing, just like overwhelm can be paralyzing, which you're an expert on. We're going to talk more about that here shortly. So what are some of the challenges? Because I know this hasn't been a perfect picture where, all the experiments have gone, swimmingly well. What are some of the challenges or obstacles that you faced along your journey to success in your businesses?
Well, you just mentioned it, that overwhelm early in the life of our business. Or I'd say actually, up to the first dozen years or so, we were so consumed by the business that we barely had time for anything else in our lives, even each other. Because I'm talking about my husband, because he and I were partners in the business. And, our family life suffered, our relationship suffered, my health suffered. I was overweight and out of shape. I didn't take the time to exercise because I don't have time. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to do that. And so that was a huge challenge. And it was, getting that book that Robert Kiyosaki recommended and diving into creating systems that paved the way for getting out of the overwhelm. So that was one of the first really big lessons in overcoming that challenge of being an owner operator instead of just being an owner of the business. So it took us a while because there's lots to it. It's not that simple to just say, snap your fingers and, oh, I've got all the systems that I need. So there was lots of trial and error. And again, you're not striving for perfection, but you are striving for improvement. So you can always get better. And we worked at it, and it took about 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, we had done enough laying of the foundation in our business so that we could step aside and let Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer run the business for us. But we didn't just totally step away, because we had in place these systems, the measurements, the data tracking, the reports. So we knew exactly what was going on with the business, whether we were there or not.
Yeah, and this is such a interesting thing to talk about today, just with all of the things that I've seen recently with small business owners in the market. And the overwhelm is because a lot of small business owners have ultimately created a job for themselves versus actually a full business. And we don't make the space to work on the business, and we're just working in the business. We're just delivering. We're not able to scale that. You hit this capacity threshold, and that's where you start feeling the overwhelm and the burnout. That's also where you leave a lot of money on the table, you have a lot of profit leaks because it's not systemized. Also, you're exhausting your decision-making power when you don't have templates and systems and things to just, cool, I'm just going to click this button that kicks off this process that's automated, or to assign it to the right person on the team to free up space so that the owner or the deliverer of the service can be in their superpower zone and their zone of genius.
Yep.
So I love that you guys have built this. That's incredible.
Yeah, it worked very well for us. In fact, it worked so well that we were able to sell the business a few years later to Alaska Airlines.
Yeah, and I know you have a class on this, so why don't you tell our listeners a bit about the Overwhelm class and how they can use it to overcome and get to where you are today.
Oh, I would love to talk about it. Thank you. So the course is called Overcome Overwhelm. create a smooth running business with less stress. And what it's all about is what Holly was just talking about, is working on your business instead of in it, getting some perspective so that you can plan your growth strategies. Because if you're up to your eyeballs in the day-to-day grind, you're not able to have the space to think about, those next steps and how you can grow, how you can scale. And that's incredibly important. So the course goes through 6 principles that I didn't create the principles. I sort of discovered the principles when I looked back at all 40 plus years of my entrepreneurial career and tried to discern which things were the ones that gave us the biggest edge. What were the things that really set us apart from other businesses that allowed us to have that level of success and be able to scale the business, exit the business, have a profitable sale? And those 6 principles are the core of the course. And I also have written a document about them, which is available for free on my website. If you go to www.ralwest.com/secrets, you get a free copy of these 6 secrets. And the course goes through, it's 8 modules altogether. The first and the last are the opening and the closing. And then the core of the course is these 6 principles. So we talk about, of course, creating systems and how to use data and measurements to track your performance and grow the business with statistics, and also using leverage, building your corporate culture, establishing a very strong team, and making sure that you're delivering world-class customer service. And all of these principles really cannot be executed beautifully without systems. So the systemization is the bedrock of the whole thing. But that's it in a nutshell. The class is available right now, and it's, as I said, 8 modules, and they're delivered one module at a time every 2 weeks. So it'll take about 16 weeks to get through it. But you need that time to be able to absorb the information and do the work, because there are worksheets that will lead you through, okay, this is the analysis that you need to do now, and then these are the steps that you need to take.
I love it, and it would suck if the overcoming overwhelm class was so overwhelming that you didn't have time to process and do the work. So I love that you've built in some time and space so that they can make the capacity to work on their business. And you guys, in case you're wondering, Ral and I are both systems people. We like to nerd out on the operating bits of our business because if you have that foundation, you have freedom and flexibility. And people think, gosh, the SOPs are so boring. The systems are so boring. Guess what, you guys? If you want the fun parts of your business, this is the foundation you need. So you should check out your course for sure. I will have that free gift and a link to her course in the show notes. So you guys can check that out if you're interested in learning more. And you want that freedom to overcome your overwhelm. Trust me, you need it. So stop denying it.
And I think that the important part of this is not just enjoying your business, it's enjoying your life. And the reason that I named my business Ral West Live in the Dream is that we live our dream. We created a goal many years ago, decades ago actually, as to how we wanted to live our lives, and we're doing it. And we have 2 homes, one in Alaska, one in Hawaii. We have a yacht. We travel around the world all the time. In 2 weeks, we're heading off to Europe for a 6-week trip. I mean, that's the kind of fun that you can have when you've got the systems backing you up. And you can, have a laptop or whatever with you so you can keep tabs on the business, but you're still off playing and having a wonderful time. And however you define your dream life, because everybody's dream is going to be different, you can achieve that if you do the work of creating those systems, working on your business.
Yeah, 100%. I actually just had an 11-day vacation, and then I was back for 3 days and I got sick. But I didn't, it wasn't a big deal because we have systems in place. I have team members that can support me. Things still worked out. And I love my assistant said, Holly, nothing has been lost because we have the systems in place and we've just rescheduled these things. And I'm like, thank you for that reminder. But yes, this is the beauty. And so while I don't have a yacht yet or 2 homes yet, I'm the earlier phase of that because I'm not 40 years into this, I'm 6 years into this. But just to kind of show our listeners, this is possible. I mean, I travel at least 6 to 8 weeks out of the year. And my business still operates. My clients are still happy. So when you have these in place and you have the right systems and the right team, it works. Now, we're going to segue perfectly into that. You talked a little bit about culture and the team. So can you share with us, based on your course and your experience, how do you create a culture of peak performance in your company?
You have to do it on purpose. You have to be extremely intentional about the culture that you want for your business. And again, this is a personal thing, just like the dream for your life. So you need to assess what are your values? What are the principles that you want your business to stand for? What do you want to communicate to your team within your business as well as to your customers, your vendors, the community? What do you want to say about your business to all of those audiences? And create a statement or whatever you want to call it, and then make sure that that's communicated so that everybody knows that this is what we stand for. And you know that Apple has a very clear cultural statement, Nordstrom does, and so forth. And these are businesses that realize that their success rests on having a very clear culture, and they make sure that they inculcate it throughout their organization and throughout the community and to their customers. And we had a very, very clear culture statement. And it was actually one that my husband came up with, and he called it the work ethic, but he spelled work W-E-R-Q. And the W stands for win-win. The E was efficiency. The R was responsibility, and the Q was quality. And we trained our team to use this as the foundation for making decisions. If something came up, a customer was unhappy or a vendor was unhappy, we just say, okay, is it a win-win? Are we being efficient? Are we taking responsibility? And are we delivering that quality product? So it really helped us to step back. We didn't have to be there all the time to monitor and help everyone, do the hand holding to help everyone make a decision, because we had this foundation and they could use it.
I love that. It makes you think of, they have like, what would Jesus do? I had a client recently say, I replaced that with what would Holly do? And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. But when you have something like the work method, it's like, what would Ral and her husband do based on our work method and principles? And then that makes it so much more tangible and specific and clear, so that your folks are not kind of tied down or not free to make decisions. You want to have things like the work method that Ral and her husband created, so that her employees are empowered and set up for success because they're clear on what they stand for. They're clear on the mission. They're clear on the vision. They're clear on how and who they serve. And so I love the simplicity, but also the intentionality behind that. And you're right, it does happen on purpose. You have to intentionally hire your people. You have to continually reiterate and communicate those methods and things. And you have to set them up for success with something like the work method. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. And winning was very, very important to our team and to our culture. And when the company won, we made sure that everybody won, meaning they got something in their pockets. And we shared the wealth. And then we celebrated big time, big parties, limousines and, black tie events. And one time we took the whole company to Las Vegas for the night. I mean, we did it big.
Yeah, why not? Business, when you're doing it correctly, you're building your business family. And you're going to want to make sure that they get a piece of that pie. And I mean, the incentives I have for my team are directly tied to revenue. If our revenue grows and they're helping with that, which they all have revenue goals of some sort, they get a percentage of that. They have bonuses relate to that because I want them to win. And I'm personally not just invested in them professionally, but I want their personal life to be their dream life. Yes. And so when we create those wins and we celebrate together, it creates such a special bond and connection. And it's going to help you retain your employees, which gets to my next question. How important is the employee experience related to peak performance, and how did you instill this in your business?
It's everything. It's very, very tied to success. And as you just said, the longevity of each employee. I mean, we had people with us for over 20 years, and we only had the business for 25. So, it was pretty much, they'd probably still be with us if we still had the business, but, we sold it and it closed down because the Alaska Airlines didn't continue operating our little business. They just absorbed our market. But, we actually, referred to ourselves as the Hawaiian Vacations Ohana. And in Hawaiian, Ohana is family. So you just said that. And even though it's been 16 years since we sold the company, the people that we worked with back then still call themselves the Ohana, and we still keep in touch and we have reunions, and it's a lovely thing. We are so pleased and proud of all the successes that have come from our team, because we made a point of making sure that they would learn something from us that they could take with them into whatever they were going to do next. We knew that anybody who joined our business was probably going to be going on to something at some point that didn't include our business. And we wanted to make sure that we could make their lives better because they learned something and could take that with them.
I love that. Yeah, that's so important. And that's what makes a true leader, a true culture. That's what distinguishes the bosses that know and walk the talk. They're the people that make your life better. They are teaching you new skills. And not just the hard skills, right? So we're talking about sales skills and other things and SOPs and customer service, but the soft skills, right? Mindset and pushing through and not having any limits and really getting them the right resources. Do you have the right thinking? Because we all know stinking thinking is like just having that bad apple in your organization. And so creating those win-wins, creating that and reinforcing and investing in that family is so crucial. Now, of course, your employee experience affects your customer experience. So what I want to ask you is, how did you optimize the customer experience alongside this?
That's an excellent question. We had what we called a valuable final product that we kept in mind, and we taught our whole team how to focus on creating this. And our valuable final product for Hawaiian Vacations, our business, we chartered wide-body jets and ran them between Anchorage and Honolulu mostly. We had some other routes too, but primarily we did that. So our valuable final product was a tan, happy passenger getting off the plane when they returned to Alaska and so happy that they wanted to turn around and go right back to Hawaii again. And I think that because we focused on that, I think the customers subconsciously anyway knew that we wanted them to have that wonderful experience. We wanted them to enjoy their time in Hawaii. We wanted it to be a true R&R for them. So we went out of our way to smooth things out. I remember one of the things in particular was, unfortunately with airline service, sometimes there's delays. I'm sure none of your audience has ever experienced that, but
that's hilarious.
Yeah. So, but with our situation, the plane originated in Honolulu, flew to Anchorage, 5.5 hours, did the turn there, and then that same plane and same crew went back to Honolulu. Well, the FAA has a requirement in terms of how much or, maximum number of hours that a crew can be what they call live. And if the delay lasted too long, the crew would go dead and they would have to rest the FAA mandated number of hours. I can't remember if it was 8 or 9 or 10, but whatever. the plane would have to sit there until the crew was ready to go again because we didn't have another crew that could just step in. So we had all these passengers and they were not happy and they had babies. And so we learned to prepare for these unfortunate delays ahead of time so that we would be there just in case it was needed. We had water, we had formula, we had diapers, we had cash, we had meal vouchers, we had, lists of people, our staff who would be on call every flight. People knew that, okay, I'm on call for this flight. So if there's a delay, I'm going to get a phone call at whatever time, night or day, and I have to go to the airport or swing by the office and pick up the supplies. And this became our, flight delay procedure. And we had a manual and everything was spelled out. So that, of course, impacted the customer experience because hopefully the customers recognized that we really cared about making this a little bit smoother for them. I mean, yes, there's anxiety and disappointment and, pain with any delay situation like that, but what can we do to minimize that and make it easier for them? So,
my goodness, compared to what happens today. It's just laughable at this point, the way that delays are handled. There's no humanity and no care. You go to ask a question, the agent is just irritated and annoyed that you even exist as a customer. So, y'all, if you guys are listening, I do hope you check out her course. But before we talk more about that at the end here, we're going to talk about money. So how did Ral get her 2 homes and her yacht? But before we get to that, when have you left money on the table and what did you do to fix it?
Oh gosh. I'm sure that there have been plenty of times that we've left money on the table. I'm not sure how to answer that. Usually if we recognize that had happened, we, just make a correction immediately. And, for example, in the airline business, leaving money on the table means, when you're selling a seat, when that plane leaves, that seat is no longer available for revenue. So you don't want to leave any money on the table by having empty seats. You also don't want to leave any money on the table by selling seats too low if it's a high demand period. So there are many times that, that happened. It's like, oh, we underestimated the popularity of a particular date. And dang, we know we could have gotten more out of that. So we just adjust the policies and adjust the, it was called, load yield management. Thank you, John, sitting here. Yield management. It was a science. And so we would study that and, we had spreadsheets and statistics and, you had to stay on top of that. And every once in a while there would be a mistake. But I think one of the important things that we learned early on was that when a mistake happened, the tendency is to blame the person that made the mistake. And we learned that no, it's usually the system that's at fault. Yeah. And in fact, 80% of the time it's the system and 20% of the time it's the person just, And I remember one time the mistake was, high 5-digit mistake. And I was like, ugh, would have been really nice to blame that person. But no, we said, don't fret about it. He was beating himself up quite a bit. And it's like, okay, what do we do to correct the system so that this doesn't happen again? And that's what you do.
So important. I'm so glad you brought that up. This is such a huge mistake that I see so many people making with their first hire, next hire, or when they're going through massive growth seasons. It's so easy to not take responsibility. And it is typically either the leadership team or the system that's broken. And I know, for example, somebody on my team, I won't say who, has made a mistake here or there, and this individual is really hard on themselves. They definitely have this perfectionist tendency, which I understand. I have the same issue. but I have to remind them, no, it's actually my fault because there's a gap in our standard operating procedure here. And then I'm like, how about instead of blaming a person, let's look at how we fix this and prevent this ever happening in the future. Let's see what we can do to plug this profit leak so that it doesn't happen again. So it's instead looking at how do we make sure we never, leave money on the table again or lose that profit versus blaming. Because blaming never leads to anything productive. So important. Yeah.
Right. Yes, exactly. And yeah, it's very important to just focus on the system. And if you've got good people, they'll appreciate that because they will appreciate that you didn't beat them up for their mistake.
Oh, you do, you're going to lose them too. So,
yes,
and then you're going to create trust.
And that's not a win-win.
No,
and you got to look at the responsibility aspect, which you just mentioned, is that the responsibility, goes all the way to the top. And we just take responsibility by treating any kind of an error or upset as, an opportunity to make it right and take responsibility for it.
I love that. Beautiful. What is the next shiny object that you're wanting to turn into a new revenue stream today?
Well, my course is the shiny object that I'm working on right now. And then I have other plans beyond that. Next will be, to write my book and then eventually to create a mastermind, and probably have some retreats like in Maui or Sitka and bring together a bunch of wonderful, brilliant people that can share some ideas and growth for a few days and maybe some spa treatments too. So
you guys, so Ral is, full disclosure, a client, amazing person. So I know her more than what you're getting. You're getting a small glimpse into how incredible she is. If you are listening to this and you're wanting to have the freedom, have flexibility, live your dream life, and you don't know where to get started, you need to check out her class. And this is like the cheapest way you're going to get access to Ral, because once you have the mastermind, it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
So you guys, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that. And, the price of the course is so small compared to the value that is in it. I mean, if I had been able to take this course 30 years ago, oh my God, it would have helped me so much. I would have sped through some of those challenges. But what I'm doing is taking all of those learning experiences, all of those mistakes, and handing them to people so that, here, learn from this, and you can do it without spending the thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars having this learning experience yourself.
Yeah, you guys, in case you didn't get the message here, if you're looking for having your 2 dream homes, your yacht, your dream life, whatever that is, saving your marriage, saving your family, on a silver platter, instead of taking all the years of time that she and her husband put into this, sign up. So make sure you check that out. It's in the show notes. It'll be in the YouTube notes. So there's no excuse. Hit pause and do it. We're going to wrap up this amazing chat, Ral. I'm going to ask you 2 more rapid fire questions. What is the best one piece of advice you would share with our listeners today?
Never give up.
Love it.
You have to be persistent, and you have to believe in yourself. So that goes hand in hand. Believe in yourself, believe in the value that you can provide, and don't give up. And it's easy to get discouraged, but it's a mistake to get discouraged. You have to be persistent.
Beautiful. And what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
I want so many people to have the life that they truly want. That just warms my heart to think about people enjoying their lives. I hate seeing people slaving away and being overburdened and overstressed, exhausted. There's just no reason for it. There's a way out of that. And I would dearly love to have my legacy be hundreds, thousands of people saying, thanks to Ral, my life is beautiful.
And I can't wait to come to your mastermind and these retreats. It sounds fun. Oh my goodness. Magical stuff.
Absolutely. It's going to be top drawer.
You know what? I'll bring some people too. It'll be fun. Amazing, Ral. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you travel a lot. You walk the talk of living your dream, and your family's a huge part of that prioritization. So thank you so much for sharing the time to share these valuable lessons and insights with our listeners today.
Thank you, Holly. It's been great, and you're a wonderful host.
Thank you. All right, to our listeners, again, make sure you take action that matches the size of your dreams, as well as if you love this podcast, please share it out with lots of people so we can help Ral achieve her legacy, share this important message with many people, subscribe to us on YouTube, and of course, if you loved it, give us 5 stars. All right, we'll see you on our next episode of Inspiration Contagion. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. If the show inspired you, I ask that you subscribe and share it with your network. Let's spread inspiration together today.